Hello, everyone. Sufit here. I'm here today with Chuck Ticker, estate mediator and author of Bobby Gets Bupkis, Navigating the Sibling Estate Fight. Chuck joins us today from thesiblingguy.com. Welcome, Chuck.
Hi, Sophie. Good to be back.
So I have a question for you today, Chuck, and it's kind of, I was thinking about this and I was going both ways on this. Should a mediator be likable? What are the pros? What are the cons? Yeah. What do you think about this issue?
I have, yeah, I certainly had some pretty strong feelings about that. I mean, I like to think that I'm likable. And I remember when I was litigating, uh, it was always a bit of a, you know, dilemma or concern, whatever, because you say, you're a litigator, you got to be tough, got to be a shark, you can't be likable. And I noticed that early in my career, everybody, especially younger lawyers, they wanted to be tough, no, and like, really difficult. And what I found over the years was that doesn't work, and it doesn't work. It didn't work for me. You got to be true to yourself, right? Um, and and actually, I tell young lawyers, look, I said your reputation is the most important thing, and if you tick off another lawyer because you're just being nasty just to be nasty, you're going to have a difficulty, uh, negotiating down the road. And clients always said they want a shark. And I said, sure, you want a shark? Be prepared to spend another $100,000 in legal fees because sharks like to fight. The other side's going to fight back. It doesn't help you. So to get back to your question, should a mediator be likable? I think myself and a lot of mediators I know go into mediation because they like working with parties, they like working with individuals, and they want to help. They want to help them get out of that mess. So I think it's important, and if you're going to do that, the party who's coming to this mediation, all worked up and tensed up and emotional, you have to build their trust. You have to get a rapport. You don't have a lot of time to do it. You're just meeting them the day of the mediation. So you want to come across as somebody who is not threatening, someone who's going to make them feel comfortable, put on a smile, and that goes a long way in getting them to relax and start dealing with the issues at hand. I got some stories I could tell you where
Go ahead,
I think the
tell us.
personality of a mediator can make or break a mediation.
Tell us.
So this is one where I was involved as a lawyer, and I think there were three or four lawyers and several parties involved, siblings fighting, a lot of money, and we booked. It was so complicated. We booked 2 days of mediation, and and everyone said, "Well, we need a mediator who's going to be tough, who's going to tell the parties how it is." So we decided on a retired judge whom I didn't know. I had never, but had a reputation as being a no nonsense judge, and he's going to get it done because he's going to tell the parties what it is and how it's going to go. I said, okay, maybe that's what they need. So we get to the mediation. The first thing that the judge did, he spent an hour going through the mediation agreement clause by clause. So everybody's just going, like, what are you doing here? He's going through this agreement that everybody, just signs. It's confidential. Anyway, and then he basically gives S to everybody, being really angry and saying, and saying all kinds of nasty things, and everyone's going, huh? Who is this? So what happens is they sent the mediator to his office, the judge to his office. The lawyers are talking amongst themselves, and they said, what are we going to do? We got day two. We don't want this guy. It's not helping us. So we had to go to the judge and say, you know what, we decided we're canceling tomorrow. And what happened is the next day we continued without the mediator.
Oh,
Now, the case didn't settle, but so it's a long story. But the point I'm making is, had they had a mediator who was a little less aggressive initially, who was a little more friendly and make people comfortable, it probably or could have gone totally different. But because you had someone who was, still thought they were a judge in court and going to, they're in charge of the case and whatever they say goes, that just turned off people. They got their backs up and we went nowhere. So I'm sorry for if I went on too long, but that's an example about a mediator that, I'm sure none of those lawyers will ever use again. And I've had this told to me, I don't want to pick on judges, but I've had this told to me by other counsel that sometimes, if you pick the wrong mediator, and they could be well known and they could be costing a fortune in fees, but if they don't bring something to the table that makes the parties want to talk and feel comfortable, you're wasting your money.
But then at the same time, wouldn't you say that there's a danger of being too likable, that maybe being a people pleaser and, not telling it how it is? Isn't that also a risk?
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, it's very nice to say, empathize with each side separately. Yeah, oh, I agree. This must be very difficult for you, or this must have been terrible when your brother did this to you. Yeah, and you go to the other room and you do something similar. Yeah, you have a point that at some point, what is needed to make the deal. So I think what it can be helpful is once you have that rapport and that trust, you can take a little more liberties in being a little more tough and saying, okay, but have you thought about this? And do you really want to, roll the dice and spend another $100,000 in legal costs? Or what does this look like if this case blows up? So it's much easier for someone to hear some tough love, so to speak, from the mediator if initially you're likable and
I
friendly.
see. I
Otherwise,
see.
they're not going to listen to you. In my view, they're not going to listen to you if you come on too strong right at the beginning. I have another very quick story if we have time.
Yeah, of course.
It was also a retired judge who was mediating the case. And the opening se it was my client was actually a lawyer, but he was fighting his sibling. Uh, and we in the opening session with the mediator, the opposite lawyer was in our room with us. The judge says, if I was deciding this case, Mr. Ticker, your client would lose everything. The first thing out of his mouth. Well,
Wow.
guess where that mediation went? You know,
Yeah.
we sent the judge to his office, and the two lawyers tried to save the day that day, and we didn't settle. So it's so important, I think, to build that rapport. Uh, and yeah, do you do you have to be sometimes tough? Maybe a little bit, but certainly not at the beginning.
Okay. Okay. There you have it. I'm discussing this here today with Chuck Ticker, estate mediator and author of Bobby Gets Bupkis, Navigating the Sibling Estate Fight. Little likability goes a long way. Chuck joins us today from thesibling.guy.com. Thank you very much, Chuck.
My pleasure.